In this video, video 15 of 24, we talk about my favorite enhancement because I had a part to play with this particular part of this upgrade. And this has to do with the outputs. Yes, we now have true programmable outputs, meaning that the aux1 and the aux2 that were stereo pairs can now be made into mono. So I can send something out separately on aux1 left, another thing on aux1 right, something else on aux2 left, and something else on aux2 right, and of course something on the stereo. It would have been nice to also have that on stereo, then that could give you 6 dedicated separate outs. But for now we have 4 dedicated separate outs and the stereo out as well. And this is easily achievable by going over here to the menu, and then you go into controls. And you will notice now that once you do that, you have this new button on the bottom that says to stereo, 4 mono output assigns, right? Like I said before. So once you go in there, you now have access to this screen where you can now, on the left side here, it tells you the different elements like voice 1, voice 2, drawbar, lower 1, bass, drum, chord, microphone. And on the right side, what can you assign those to? aux1 left, aux1 right, aux2 left, aux2 right, or out of the stereo. The first one here says voice 1. Right now, the default for everything is on the left and right. So if you're used to playing by yourself, you know, the small PA system, this is where you want to be. You want to just use your left and right output. I've seen some people only use a left mono, and you're losing a lot by doing that, especially with a machine like this. You want to always have stereo when and where possible, right? But let's say you're playing in a big gymnasium or in a big hall where you have a dedicated sound engineer, or if you're in the studio and you want to be able to send dedicated tracks on different outputs on the back of this unit. Now you can do that. So for an example, voice 1, I can say voice 1 should go to aux1 left. I can still do the old school way of aux1 left and right, for voice 1. But again, I'm using them as pairs. But now I can separate. I can say voice 1 left, voice 1 should come out of aux1 left channel. Voice 2 should come out of aux1 right channel. Okay? Now I come to the drawbar of my organ. Let's say for some reason, I want the drawbar to have a separate channel. Or I just say, you know what? Leave it on the left and right channel right there. My MIDI player, all my MIDI files should come out on my left and right and headphone. That's okay. My lowers, I can now say, hey, lowers, I can put those and let's say aux2 left, okay? And my bass, this is where it gets very important now. My bass and drums in particular, aux2 right, okay? And my drum, I can now say, well, the drum kind of has the heavy stuff. I want to put that to aux2 right as well, okay? My chords, I'm going to put them where I put my lower, aux2 left, for an example, okay? Microphone, I'm going to keep that on the left and right output. So on the back of my event, I'm going to have 6 wires going to my mixer. And on my mixing board, I'm going to have, just as if it's a live band that's performing. When a band is playing, the mixer, the guy who's in the front, the sound engineer, has control of dedicated channels so they can make your drums louder. Now, I know some are going to argue and say, well, I have a mixer on here too. That is true, right? But you have a mixer out here, which is sending out everything, all the information onto 2 channels, versus having all the information distinct coming out on 6 different channels and going out for further processing. This is very helpful, especially if you're in the studio and you want to be able to record one shot, but have dedicated tracks, your drum track, your bass track, your chord track, your live guitar track, all recorded in Pro Tools at once. So that means that I can go to the studio, I can open up 6 tracks on Pro Tools, for an example, hit record, and start playing, and have 6 dedicated instrumentation on those tracks in real time. Or flip it around, let's say I'm playing in a live environment, I have a mixer, a sound engineer using a mixer. How does that help? He can boost, for an example, or compress the drums, right, without touching your voice. He can compress the bass, make it sound thick and fat. Or if you're playing on the stage, for an example, you can actually have a bass bin or a bass cabinet and have one wire carrying just the bass to that bass cabinet. You have another cabinet that has, let's say, keyboard amplifier, and you put all the other keyboard sounds there, and another bass cabinet for your drums. So now when you're playing, you actually feel like you're playing with a live band because you have dedicated instrumentation coming out on the stage. Imagine multiplying that effect in the front of the house. That's what they call the FOH, front of the house. Now I'm getting a little bit too deep, but that is where this keyboard now enters what I would call professionalism, right? That would be the right way to do it. I know that most of you out there will not do that. You're just going to stick with your left and right, which is fine. I mean, the keyboard does sound great as it is. But the more separation you have on the tracks and the more control you give to your sound person, if and only if you trust that sound person, then the better that the machine and that your sound can sound. So this is something that I had discussed with Ketron a long time ago, and I'm so happy to actually see that this is actually being birthed and is now a reality. Just so you know, Ketron have been doing this multiple outputs since 1996, I believe, when the MS series first came out. We've always had 4 outputs on that board, and that went to the X1, went over to the SD1, and went over to the Audio, where it now went from 4 to 6, and has now come back on the Ketron Event, which is the current flagship for Ketron. So that's a very, very, very powerful tool indeed. Okay, kudos.